from the geopolitical perspective, that of course undermines the strengths of NATO as an organization, because we here in Ukraine, we do wish for us to become NATO member states because we want to believe that this is the best guarantee for our security. But with claims like this, in case the elections go the way Donald Trump wants it to go, that would mean that NATO is no longer a guarantee for us over here in Ukraine.
Russian officials have called Donald Trump's comments appalling and unhinged. Inna Sovsun is a Ukrainian MP and deputy head of the Holos Party and joins us now. Inna, thank you so much for giving us your time.
Good morning to you. Good afternoon. Sorry.
In a roundabout way, what do you make of Donald Trump's comments there? This idea that he seemed to be suggesting that to attack NATO members who haven't paid their full share of the NATO membership.
Well, I think that, first of all, the first reaction is emotional one. It's unacceptable on multiple ways, because that is basically encouraging someone to attack another country and go through what we are going through here in Ukraine. And that is not something any adequate person would wish for another person to go through. That is just inadequate on so many levels, to encourage someone to go to war against another nation for no good reason whatsoever. That is basically blaming the victim, if you want, and claiming that the victim deserves to be punished, to be attacked, to be at war against. So that is first emotional reaction, that is simply inadequate on a human level to say things like that. Someone deserves to be attacked by any other country, including Russia. But then also from the geopolitical perspective, that of course undermines the strengths of NATO as an organization, because we here in Ukraine, we do wish for us to become NATO member states because we want to believe that this is the best guarantee for our security. But with claims like this, in case the elections go the way Donald Trump wants it to go, that would mean that NATO is no longer a guarantee for us over here in Ukraine. We are not NATO member state as of yet. Of course, we do spend way more in terms of national budget on military affairs, of course, but we want to see we want to see some bright light at the end of this terrible tunnel we're going through, and NATO membership seemed to be one. But with claims like this, that of course questions this assumption for us here in Ukraine a lot.
Now, we have seen the uphill battle that President Biden has had to go through. Senators are debating a $95 billion package aid for Ukraine, Israel and Taiwan. Republicans are still throwing up roadblocks in both congressional chambers. How vital is this package for Ukraine right now?
It is critical. What we are seeing now is that the delays in that aid is already causing multiple problems on the front line. Our military personnel claim that they simply don't have ammunition to be used against Russians. We never had superiority in terms of ammunitions, but we at least had 1 to 2 percentage of ammunition rate compared to Russians. Now we simply don't have what to shoot with. And not to speak about any other types of aid that we expected to be delivered. So it is critical. We depend upon US military aid. Up to 70% of our aid comes from that source. So of course we are very nervous over here about how this the decision will be made by Congress, how soon aid would be delivered, if it is made positively. But of course even more concerned about what if elections go Trump way in November. What will happen to aid then? That is probably our biggest concern in the midterm perspective.
Well, let's talk about that concern. What do you think a second Trump presidency should, as you said, elections go Donald Trump's way in November? What does that mean for Ukraine?
Well, if he would actually do what he now promises to do, which basically cut aid to Ukraine and start some sort of negotiations with Putin, given his, trend to liken Putin, that we might expect him to be rather perceptive towards Putin's arguments, and many of those we have heard on his recent interview to Mr. Tucker, of course. So that would, of course, if he acts upon what he's saying, that will, of course, mean that we will not get any aid whatsoever. This will basically mean that best case scenario, we would not be able to get back the land that Putin has grabbed already. Worst case scenario, we might expect Putin trying to get Kiev again. And that is, of course, something that the perspective we don't want to think about, but we understand that it can be a possibility if he is not, if we are not being helped by the Americans any longer.
So are you saying that without financial aid from the US, Kyiv is in danger?
Not so much financial as military. Financial aid is now largely supplemented by the EU. So financial aid is, of course, it's still crucial. We basically spend all the taxes we collect inside Ukraine, all the money we produce here in Ukraine, on military affairs. So we of course depend on financial aid, but military aid is even more crucial. And in terms of military aid, if we stop getting aid from the Americans, yes, I believe that Putin will try another offensive, and yes, he might include Kyiv again.
Is there any scenario in which the Ukrainian government can sit down with the Russian president? I mean, you mentioned that Tucker Carlson interview. He did seem to say that there is some room for negotiation. Is there any scenario where those negotiations take place?
Well, we all know that all wars end with some sort of negotiations at one point. And though on an, again, emotional, personal level, it's very difficult to imagine that, but we understand the reality that negotiations will have to be held at some point. The question is what reality they will kind of fixate. And I think that is the biggest issue. And as of right now, absolute majority of Ukrainians believe that we should continue fighting until we regain full control of our border within the international recognized borders. And that is not changing. So 90% of Ukrainians believe that that is what we need to be doing, that we need to be fighting. But of course, without any military aid, imagining how to get there would be close to impossible, unfortunately.
Inna Sovsun, thank you so much for giving us your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Inna Sovsun's a Ukrainian MP and deputy head of the Holos Party.